Hello, adventurers. My name's Tyler.
And I'm Richard.
On today's episode, we're going over Chapter 4 of Daggerheart's core rulebook. Welcome to True Strike. Hey, is this thing on? Tyler from the future here. These videos, I'm putting this up right now. It's about to go live for you guys in approximately like 20 hours. But for us, we've already recorded it and we wanted to hit this bit now instead of in like a week or two or whatever, whenever we can get it to you guys. So we don't do shorts and stuff. So this is going to go up as short, but I'm also going to throw it into the episode. You're going to see it in a couple of places. So Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford have joined Darrington Press. Hold on. Let me, straight from the Darrington Press blog, darringtonpress.com. Welcoming Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford to our team. Exciting news. Our Darrington Press team has grown, adding Chris Perkins as our creative director and Jeremy Crawford as game director. We're thrilled to welcome both Chris and Jeremy's expertise in game design and storytelling, honed through decades of experience working together on tabletop games such as Dungeons & Dragons, Star Wars role-playing, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and Blue Rose. We're enormous fans of their work and are honored to welcome them to our team. At Darrington Press, they'll be developing novel game concepts as well as expanding upon games we've released so far. Here are some of the words from our new team members. Storytelling has always been at the heart of everything I do, and joining Darrington Press feels a bit like coming home, says Perkins, creative director of Darrington Press. I've loved being a part of the extended Critical Role family as a regular guest over the years, and I'm beyond excited to help create new worlds full of adventure. I've always believed that great games invite everyone to the table, and it's exactly what excites me about joining Darrington Press, said Crawford, game director of Darrington Press. This team is passionate, wildly creative, and committed to building welcoming, connected, amazing, story-driven experiences. I can't wait to expand on what Critical Role has created to develop some of the really fun and unique games. Welcome, Chris and Jeremy. To stay up to date on news from Darrington Press and where our joint adventure will take us, sign up for a newsletter or join our Discord. So didn't expect that. They left Wizards of the Coast earlier this year, and I kind of just was wondering, Richard and I have talked, or are they going to be riding off to the sunset together? Or will they, we're like, it'd be wild if they joined, Daggerheart team and, with Spencer Stark and everyone. We didn't actually think that was going to happen. So may have not actually been on our bingo cards, but kind of wish it was. But all things considered, is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? The 2024, revision of the D&D, 5th edition wasn't taken super well by everybody. Richard's a big fan of it. I'm less so, but it's fine. We definitely know some people that are really big into it, and they're instrumental in getting that across the finish line. So it's just was the confines of what D&D was that holding them back? Is this creative outlet going to be better for them? We'll see. I have high hopes. We've met with both of them in the past, and they're great people. We love talking to them, and I'm glad that we'll get to see more of them, in the future here. But I guess we'll see. I mean, the Darrington Press team's pretty rock solid. I don't think they would have hired them if they weren't sure that they were going to be a great fit. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see what the future holds. If nothing else, this just proves to me that they do see a bigger future for not only Daggerheart, which, thank God, but, some of the Illuminated Worlds games and stuff. Maybe we'll see more of those pop up soon. I'm just stoked for the future of everything Darrington Press is working on. This is going to be cool one way or the other. If it shows that they're committed and Critical Role's committed to this and, making new content, fresh ideas and stuff down the road, I'm super hyped. Interesting news. The last bit I'll touch on here. Todd Kendrick was let go today as well. Right here from Todd's X account. I have been laid off from D&D. Thank you to Chris Perkins, Jeremy Crawford, and the entire D&D team for being some of the kindest, most talented, and passionate people I've ever known. This is my dream job. The tabletop community has given me everything. So, hey, are they looking to scoop up everyone that was working on D&D? or is Todd just out in the wings? I don't know. Either way, not only, if you're watching the full podcast and I've interrupted that, hey, I hope you enjoy that. We've really enjoyed doing this series. But most importantly, for what I'm getting at right now, let us know what you think of this whole, Chris and Jeremy thing, because that's loaded one way or the other. Thanks, everyone. See you.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to the show.
What's up?
We are moving along through the Daggerheart core rulebook on our way into Chapter 4, Adversaries and Environments.
I thought you were going to mispronounce the first one, but you got me.
I know. I got to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, we're here. This is one of those chapters where when we were discussing it going into it, I was like, this might actually end up being like a shorter episode.
Normal.
I'm like craving. We say shorter. Our episodes are typically an hour if you're new to the channel.
Episode.
Yeah. I don't actually know because we tend to tangent on things. So even bits that might be shorter, we might end up being another 2-hour episode. We'll see.
What we're not going to do is read every single monster stat.
No.
Or adversary, if you...
or environment, stat block.
Yeah, no, we're not going to read every individual one. Eventually, we are going to go over environments, though. And we'll probably do monsters as well, but we're not there yet. So this is just us talking as like an overview of this chapter. I do have some highlight monsters. I have one of every tier, and I believe you did the same.
Yeah.
So we do have some highlight monsters that we're going to talk about just because it's, we can't go over the monsters and not highlight a couple of them.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to go over some of them and giving our thoughts there and everything. At this point, you understand how these overviews are working. But for those of you who are asking for more Daggerheart content, don't worry. There's going to be a lot more coming after we finish this overview series, going through each of the chapters. Our plan is to do a review of the core rulebook. And then, after that, we're going to start figuring out exactly how we're going to tackle more of this game. Eventually, we're going to do things like going through different domains. We're going to go through monsters. We're going to go through, which we'll talk about next chapter. We're going to deep dive into different frameworks and things. So there's a lot more to talk about in this one book.
Oh, yeah.
So we will definitely get to it.
Beefy book.
We just can't do all of it in one episode, or there'll be 5-hour episodes, and we record 2 of these at a time. So that's 10 hours.
Yeah.
So you want to start us off?
Yeah. So starting us off in chapter 4, we begin with using adversaries. So this first part of the section talks about the adversary breakdown. So this is how you're actually going to read your stat blocks. It's pretty straightforward. You have your name, you have the tier, which will tell you when where you're going to want to be using your adversaries.
Yep.
You have the type. So we'll get into types in a minute because there are a bunch of different types that we are going to be talking about tonight. Description, your basic description, which is going to be very important in this one. We'll talk about that in a minute too. The motives and tactics, this gives you an idea of what your adversaries that you're putting in your game are up to. So like what they're trying to accomplish and how they're going to go about doing it. Difficulty, so you have to think of this like the evasion on a PC. So instead of having evasion, your adversaries have a difficulty rating. So this is the number that your PCs are going to have to hit to actually do anything to them. Damage thresholds, hit points, and stress, all pretty straightforward, same thing. Attack modifiers that they have for their abilities, what their standard attack is, experiences. So these are experiences just like the PCs have, but a lot more blanketed, so they cover more range. And then you have features. So these are going to be these things that make your adversary special. So things that they can do. This could be anything from like passive things, that they have to specific actions that they can take.
Yeah. It's basically, it differentiates them from other adversaries that might be similar. For example, like different kinds of bandits and stuff will have different features. Something to just jump up here back to tier, just in case this is one of the first episodes you're jumping into. There are 4 tiers in Daggerheart. Tiers 1, 2, 3, 4, of course. Level 1 is your tier 1. 2, 3, 4 is your 2. 5, 6, 7 is your tier 3. and 8, 9, 10 for your tier 4. Why this is important is this will allow you to basically look at what level your players are, and that will tell you what tier adversaries they should be facing for the most part.
Yeah, what you should be looking at as your like jumping off point.
Yeah, and Daggerheart does this kind of across the board. So when you're looking at, you're building your combat, right? You're also looking at what kind of gear do my players have. My PCs have, tier 1 gear still, weapons or armor, and they're up, in tier 2 now, like, maybe level 4. You probably, should be giving them some stuff. And in fact, they're going to be moving into tier, 3 soon. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Yep. Next, we jump right into adversary types. So this is the types that we talked about before. So these are all the main types that the adversaries in this book are going to be lumped into.
Yes,
and it kind of gives you an idea of, like, a base idea of what it is you're dealing with, but then also special rules that might go along with each one. So each one has a short description that goes along with it. Bruisers are the tough ones that are just out there, punching and hitting the front line.
Yep.
You have hordes, which are your groups of identical creatures that are all acting together as like a single unit. You have leaders. Those are the ones that are commanding and summoning other adversaries onto the battlefield. You have minions. These are the like large number groups that are like easily dispatched that also get weaker as they, die down.
They have a similar idea to hordes.
Yeah, to hordes.
We'll differentiate them when we get to them. But yes, don't mix up your hordes and minions.
Yep. Two separate things. Ranged are exactly that. They're the ones that are staying on the outlying and doing ranged attacks in. You have skulks, which I think of as like your rogues of the adversary world.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that are kind of like moving around, kind of manipulating, exploiting opportunities. You have your socials. This one is one of my favorite groups in here because this is an adversary that isn't one that is necessarily one that you're going to be fighting. This could be, something that does a lot of talking or, like social manipulation.
Yeah. I almost wish there was a second one of these kind of broke out one way or another. But at that same time, I don't know what it would be.
Yeah,
so
I don't like it.
Maybe it's just blankets, all your social encounter baggies.
Solos is your formidable challenges to the whole party. So these are like one-shot baddies, like one big guy that is going to be, like manipulating the field. And then you have your standards, which are your standard rank and file baddies. So this is what everybody thinks of when
You're
you think
throwing
of
these into most
bog
combats.
standard combat. And then you have your supports. So those are the ones that are there to enhance and support your other adversaries that you have on the field.
Like Richard mentioned, adversaries will have less experiences and things like that, but they will have like a wider net of what they can, all encompass and such. We go over that here. We also go over the difficulty. This is, like he mentioned, instead of having their own evasion and armor score and things like that, and it's basically if you want to hit them with an attack, or maybe you have a spell that it has an effect. You're going to be looking for that same difficulty number, no matter what that is. So it's just less for the GM to track. This game's all about fast tracking everything, simplifying as much as possible. You have your adversary attack and reaction rolls. They go over here. It's going to be pretty much. What's the best way to put this? It's one of the things that when we brought over one of our reactions before. There's a difference between an adversary reaction and a PC reaction as far as how what they can add and everything here. You can add your adversary experiences if you add a fear, and that's going to give you their bonus there. And yeah, that's kind of the main thing here. They give you some example experiences that are going to be your vague ones, like acrobatics or bodyguard. Navigation, which was one I was actually surprised to see, just because I was trying to imagine the scenario where the adversary was building in, navigation was such a big, part of a combat or something, but then you break into the social encounters that are possible.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, maybe they do need more than just combat oriented. Adversary features, the bottom of each stat block is going to have your features that we mentioned. Some of them are going to involve marking stress to use them. Others are going to involve marking fear, using fear. These are always going to be abilities that can potentially change the flow of combat or the environment. It could be something that brings in more adversaries. It could bring in minions. It could bring in some standards even. Or it could be these big powerful attacks. Maybe you spend a fear, you spotlight your adversary, right? and you spend a fear, and all PCs within close range now have to make an instinct roll, and if they fail, you gain a fear, and they all lose a hope. There's some really, really powerful moves that they do lock behind stress and spinning fear for the sake of balance and stuff. They go over adversary tokens a little bit, which is just some abilities like some of the bruisers you mentioned. Some of these are like big, giant enemies, like these ogres or something that have are slow, and they have like wind up to their attacks. So sometimes you'll place a token on them as part of that attack, where you can't make the attack in one GM move. It's going to take 2. So you'd place the token on it to show that you've done the first stage, essentially, and narrate, they're winding up for the attack. And then if they have the token, when you activate them again, you remove the token, and then you can do the attack. Yeah. It's just a way to track, if you've already done that first stage or not. We're going over adversary actions here. You've got your standard attacks, unique actions, and other actions. Every adversary is going to have a standard attack. It's going to tell you what their, use your attack modifier. It's going to tell you the name of the attack, the range. Just like a PC, you're going to have, know what your damage die and everything is there. They're all going to have this. It's going to be bread and butter for most combats for most enemies, but where you get into the unique actions, and that's what makes each of them a little more fun. You have these special actions. They're going to list there as well. They could be magical talents, other combat techniques, things that force PCs to do reaction rolls or other abilities. Other actions is other things. They will tell you in the stat block.
Yeah, it could be all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yep. Some unique action examples they listed here. They got 2 here. They got 1 for the Haymaker, which this one I always thought was fun. Make an attack against a target within very close range. On a success, deal X amount direct physical damage. Now, direct damage cannot be negated with armor. You just do that, and then you match that on the, your PC's thresholds, and they take that much damage. Mm-hmm. So if your major is 5 and I do 6, well, guess what? You're taking major. You're not using, a armor slot. So nasty sometimes. And then the other one they list here is Shredding Strike. An action. Make an attack against the target within very close range. On a success, deal X physical damage, and the target must mark an armor slot without gaining its benefit. They can still use armor to reduce the damage. So this is an instance where they can still use an armor slot in addition to the one they have to mark. But the whole point of it is you're shredding through, your player's armor, which, some people have some like stalwart guardians that are all built up and to be super tanky, and they're the problem. They've just got so much armor. This might be a way to start getting rid of some of that.
You're whittling it down.
Yeah, you're burning through it faster than they can, regenerate it. Adversary reactions here. Adversary reactions are features that don't take effect until their specific trigger occurs. Things like this could be a heavy hitter, where when this adversary deals damage with a standard attack, you can spend a fear to gain a bonus to the damage roll. These are things where essentially you're thinking like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or card games where you have like a trap card and something triggers it. If you play Muffin Time, you know all about this kind of
triggers everywhere.
There's triggers everywhere. And it's just, you've triggered my trap card, is essentially what's happened up here. Momentum is one of my favorite that they've, if you are watching the Umbra series that Critical Role is doing, he's used a character that had momentum. And it's when an adversary makes a successful attack against a PC, you gain a fear. Yeah. So this is especially nasty when you're using a solo type adversary that might have a bonus that gives them, a feature that lets them a spotlight more than once on your turn. So if they have that, then you can come in on your GM turn. Let's say your PC misses, right? You get your free move. You come in, you attack. If you hit, if you have that ability, well, not only do you gain fear because you hit, but now you can spin that fear immediately and hit him again. And if you hit him again, you get another fear. And sometimes you can go, 3-4 times in a round. It can get nasty.
Yeah, it can get nasty real quick. Momentum is harsh.
It's really cool, though.
It's really cool. Man, it's scary.
Oh, for sure. Adversary passives, they go over some of these as well, of course. This is a funky one, right? This is how I mentioned, like hordes and minions, right? I'm going to go over these 2 specific examples. They call it right here. These are things that are, the best way to explain passives. They're always happening, and but they're not always a benefit. and Daggerheart. They're just things to keep in mind. It's like specific rules to keep in mind for every adversary. Examples: Horde, passive. When the Horde has marked half or more their HP, their standard attacks deal X damage instead. So it would so on the ability, or on the passive, it'll say Horde and it'll say like 1d4, right? And if you're tracking the Horde health as a whole, even though let's say it's 4 orcs, if 2 of your orcs die and you're now at half, the damage die for the orcs will drop to D4 from D8. And that's just something to keep in mind when you're running these, because instead of managing 4 separate pools of health, you're going to manage 1. So when that pool shrinks in half, ability, the damage will change. Minions, X passive. The adversary is defeated when they take any damage. This actually took me a second to fully comprehend. I'll read the whole thing. This adversary is defeated when they take any damage. For every X damage a PC deals to this adversary, defeat an additional minion within range the attack would succeed against. So if you meet the difficulty when you hit them, one of the minions dies, no matter what. You do 1 damage, they're toast. But let's say it's minion 8 passive. If you deal 8 damage, you get to destroy 2 minions. You kill the one, you defeat a second one if you're choosing. If you do 16 damage, since that's an additional 8, you kill a 3rd minion. So this one actually took me a second to fully comprehend, but once I got it, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So basically they're rewarding you because you hit, guess what, you kill a minion for sure, automatic. But for every time you hit that number on the passive, you're killing an additional minion in that one attack.
Yeah, and it's just a way to kind of hammer home the idea that minions are incredibly weak, and you're killing them in like swaths rather than, like one at a time, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We go over some more passives. Like I mentioned, slow is the one I mentioned that, the bigger bad guys will have it in some instances where if you basically go into the attack and they mention, hey, you can't do this attack if they have slow, if they don't have a token on them, or if you haven't already initiated. So you place that token, and then the next time you would try this attack, you remove the token, and now you can do it. And it could be a heavy slam. Just think of like this large ogre, like raising up both their fist in the air. And then on, the next time you get to spotlight them, they're coming down with both fists. And it's this big, heavy swing, and it's going to do like a big area of effect, high damage. But it gives your players a chance to like dodge out of the way.
To react.
To react in some form. We go over here to some of these fear features. This is going to be the things. Essentially, you're going to spend a fear, you're going to do a feature. Example they gave here is explosion, action, spend a fear. To erupt into a fiery explosion, make an attack roll against all targets within close range. Targets the adversary succeed against take 1d8 magic damage and are knocked back to far range, which was my favorite part of that, because the 1d8 is one thing, but being knocked back to far range
back is really
and
cool.
If you're thinking of where your adversary is, if your players have them circled up, woo, they're going like crazy in directions potentially. Like you either going off a cliff or you slamming into a wall. If you slam them into a wall, it doesn't say specifically here, but or you can have them take extra damage because they hit the wall. GM discretion, I guess. Summoning features. This is going to be, whether your adversary can bring in more allies, essentially. And anytime if we're talking about an adversary and we say allies, we're talking about more adversaries.
Yes, more adversaries.
They do point that out in this chapter. Yeah. Think of different like leader roles and stuff are going to do that. Spotlighting features. Some features on different adversaries will let you immediately spotlight one or more adversaries, depending if conditions are met. So the example here is Tactician for an action. Mark a stress to spotlight this adversary and 2 allies within close range. Oh, good timing on calling out the allies thing. So for their action, you get to now have them and 2 allies move, which is nuts. Potentially.
Yeah.
But that's going to be something that, different leaders are going to have. They go over a couple of the returning rules from earlier chapters on targeting groups and attacking multiple targets. Essentially, anytime you attack a group or multiple targets, it's the one roll to everyone in that range. So you're going to roll, if you're the GM, you're going to roll your d20 to hit. If you are a PC and you're attacking adversaries, you're going to roll your duality dice, and you take that one roll, that number, and it, hits, or the roll will apply to all of, your opponents in that range.
All right, next thing we have up here is our battle guide. So this is helping you choose the adversaries that you're going to build your encounter with. This is where we get into Mathland.
Mathland!
This is the Mathland of the park. So they start off pretty simple. It's 3 times the number of PCs in combat plus 2. So very simple math that you do to figure out what your starting battle points are. So the way this works is it's a point-based system. So you come up with this basic math for how many points you have to build your encounter, essentially. But you move into adjusting of battle points. So this is where the math starts to math, because the first math I don't count, because it's 3 times X plus 2. That's easy, right? So you have 2 people in your party. It's 3 times 2 plus 2. It's very simple. Now, when you get to the adjusting, you have to start looking at what you have going on in your fight and making adjustments based on that. So they start out with subtracting a point if you think the fight should be less difficult or shorter. Simple enough. So that's just you don't want a long, prolonged thing. You just want something quick and snappy and to the point. You'll subtract a point on here, so that leaves you less that you can build your battle with. You subtract 2 points if you're using 2 or more solo adversaries. So when you're picking out your adversaries and you're using 2 or more solos, this is going to be more powerful adversaries. Now you're lowering the points again.
I'm surprised you only subtract 2 for that.
Yes and no.
Solos can be quite intense.
Can be quite intense, yeah. But I think it's more of a balance because you're already dealing with a certain number of PC players, And at that point, you're definitely less than. And if you think it's going to be too much, you can always subtract 1 to make it less difficult. Yeah.
We'll get into it.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of this, they mentioned this guide will help you roughly balance an encounter.
Roughly balance an encounter.
Keep that in mind.
Keep that in mind here. Yeah. Subtract 2 points if you add 1d4 or a static 2+ to all adversaries' damage rolls to increase basically the threat level. So this is if you want to just overall increase the stat block's damage roll. So if you think that you want them to hit harder, then you can do that. You can either make it a roll, a d4, or you can just say a static 2 across the board, and then you subtract 2 points, again, hampering the amount of battle points you have to deal with.
Yeah, just a hard-hitting, shorter fight.
Yeah. Now you get into the additions. So add 1 point if you would choose an adversary from a lower tier. So this means if you're picking from a tier that is lower than your party, essentially. So then you get to add another point. Add another point if you don't include any bruisers, hordes, leaders, or solos. So extra points if you're just doing like standards with a couple of supports, or you're doing a social encounter or
Careful
something like
supports,
that.
Though. Even more than 1 can really throw off some balances.
Can throw off balance. Lastly, you add 2 points if you think the fight should be more dangerous or last longer. So again, just like subtracting a point to give yourself less of a pool, you can add 2 if you just want your pool to expand.
Yeah.
And you just want it to be a little bit better. So what you come up with then is your total number of battle points that you have. So you use this to come up with your calculation. And then you get into spending of your points. So you spend 1 point for each group of minions equal to the size of the party. So that is however many minions equal to the size of your party, 1 thing. So if you have a group of 4, party of 4, 4 minions, 1 point. 8 minions, 2 points. Spend 1 point for each social or support adversary. Spend 2 points for each horde, range, skulk, or standard adversary. Spend 3 points for each leader adversary. Spend 4 points for each bruiser, and 5 points for each solo. This is where I think your balance with, like 2 solos comes in a little bit, because they cost 5 points. So they're not exactly cheap.
But let's say you have a standard party of 4, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at 3 times 4, so that's going to give us 12 plus 2.
So it starts out at 14.
14. So you're talking 2 solos, and that's assuming we're at tier 1 characters.
Yeah, let's say tier 1.
So let's say tier 1.
Yeah, say tier 1.
So we're going to have them against 2 solos, and then you still have 4 points to play with. Maybe bring in, 2 sets of minions and a couple a support.
That's not that bad. when you start to think about it.
Is it not?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's not that bad because I think okay, let me say this. I don't think it's that bad when you have a group of players that are fully using their character's abilities to their extent. I think in the beginning, it's going to be easy for a GM to build with the system and destroy their players with their players not fully grasping the system and working within it. But I think that's growing pains.
Yeah.
So I think that the system is okay. What I don't like about this system is the amount of back and forth math that it is going to require. Because
of this, and then
because you're building it, right?
This.
So right now you're saying, okay, I'm going to adjust my battle points, but then you have adjustments to these points based on what you're including and what you're not including. And those adjustments really come before spending of your battle points. And then spending, you're deciding which ones you're going to choose. So I can see myself building an encounter, coming up with a base cost, and then getting over to the spending of points and being now like, well, I adjusted this up one because I wasn't going to include any bruisers, but I want to include a bruiser now, so I got to subtract one. It's not, I'm being nitpicky here. Let me put that out there. I'm being incredibly nitpicky with this.
Of course.
But that would be the only fault that I see in this system right now is just the amount of back and forth I'm going to have to do with this math. That's it.
I'm not saying D&D ever got it right with CR, but I appreciate that they tried.
I appreciate that they tried.
And I would have preferred to go into it. Let's say I figure out how many battle points I need. I don't mind that system at all. From the top, I can figure out what the encounter is going to be, figure out what my total is going to be, go to my monsters on their tier list, and then if each one had, my adversaries, and if they each had their own battle point cost.
Yeah.
That's what I would like.
Yes.
Because then if I had 14 points to play with, and this solo is more powerful because of, abilities or features than this one, maybe this one costs 7 points and this one's only 5 points, then I feel like there's almost more flexibility in their monster creation that way.
Yeah.
Because now they have to try to balance. Well, these two solos need to be very similarly because they both cost 5 points.
They both cost 5 points, exactly.
And it's for ease of use and flexibility on their end, I kind of wish they just did a point system like that.
Yeah. I think that the only reason why I don't like the system 100% the way that it is because I'm the person that builds based off the monster list first. So, and that is like, I'll look at monsters and then come up with inspiration of how those monsters are going to be in the encounter.
Yes.
And that is just based on sometimes their abilities, but a lot of times their flavor, and where they're going to be, which is where I think D&D got it right, because everything is highly categorized. We talked about this in the monster manual, right? How you can look at a region and be able to tell everything that's in that region, and then look through that list and be all like, oh, I love this monster. I love this monster. This fits very thematically with what I'm building here. And then I'm going to use those in the encounter and figure it out that way. Whereas this system seems to build more from the other side, as in we're going to balance the math. And then once the math is balanced, you apply that math to choose the adversaries that fit your math. Not saying that you can't readjust your math based on what you're looking at. It's just that I tend to work inside out of this system the way that it's designed. Yeah. And that makes sense. That would be my nitpick for this system.
It's interesting, listening to let's look back at, this is Critical Role's game, right? Combats they've done in the Christmas one shot, or even in some of the current Umbra stuff, where there's been multiple, if not a majority of fights are one adversary versus a group of 4 to 7 players. And they're really intense fights with players going down left and right. You can't use this for that.
Yeah.
There's nothing on here called Mega Solo that takes, 21 points or whatever. So at the end of the day, it's still just like, D&D ends up going to be GM discretion for 90% of the time. Yeah. Will this help you at first maybe build out some combats and stuff?
Yeah.
Sure, totally. So. But the problem with that I see is you mentioned newer GMs and newer players are going to have the problem of wipes based on this because they're learning their abilities. But it's newer GMs that are going to be using this the most.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in seeing how that goes exactly.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out. I can't say that I'm angry about it in its current state.
You guys out there, if you've been using this system if you've been using the battle point system to build out your encounters, let us know what your experience has been, especially, if you've used it multiple times.
Yes.
How did your first encounter go versus your most recent?
Yeah, because we're just theory crafting right now. But so not a horrible system, but, will take some getting used to, I think, and I am interested to see how it actually plays out in practice.
Mm-hmm.
After that, we get into the actual descriptions of each of the enemy types.
Yes.
So this is kind of like your overview for each one, which basically gives you, on every single one of them, I believe they give you 2 examples for each type. They talk about the mechanics that type specializes in. They talk about their archetype, basically, their building of customs, and like making your own that fits in this category. So not using something in the book, but kind of flavoring it.
Yeah,
using
they go ahead and show you, like, they build out like a custom one with you, essentially.
Yes.
And then like hold your hand through building one, what that would look like. And then they show you what the stat block would look like after you finished it.
Yeah.
For the most part, we kind of went over what each of these are.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've spent too much time
No,
on
we don't
these,
have to spend too much time in here because,
well,
there's a couple of these that have
Absolutely.
like touchstones, which we did kind of cover. But yeah, for all their intents and purposes, they're essentially what we've already said. So bruisers are your big towering muscles. So these are the ones that you're going to be using on the front lines, attacking in.
I do like one of the points that I highlighted here, actually, because it made me chuckle, where they're talking about the bruiser, for example. And, Daggerheart's this game where, they know a lot of people are going to play at Theater of Mind, but some people are going to want to use minis on the table. And they're like, hey, if you can, anytime you have a bruiser on the battlefield, make sure you use a larger base or, the bigger minis usually imply a bigger threat. So even if you don't necessarily have a mini for whatever custom thing they've come up with, like this Minotaur Wrecker, right? That they give an example here for, or the Dire White even. You could just use something with a bigger, or if you're using dice as your minis, like
chunk.
The chunk dice next to your other dice, just give that, impression of like scale.
Yeah, this is a big thing.
Yep.
But yeah, bruisers are just that. They're bruisers. They don't have any like specific special rules outside of sometimes you're dealing with like slow and stuff like that. But that'll be on like a case-to-case basis. It's not something that applies to every single one.
Yep.
The next thing you have is hordes. So again, hordes have a specific mechanic. So that is the horde mechanic, which is their passive that we talked about that is tied to them. And again, it goes over what you can expect from hordes. So these are larger groups of enemies that are all together. I think the most important thing for hordes here is that we didn't really cover the way that hordes are actually built. So when you read a horde on its actual stat block, they have a notion of Y/HP. So where Y is the number of creatures represented by each hit point that is on the sheet. So this is kind of one of those weird, unique things that's on here. So if they give you an example here, which is the zombie pack, right? So at the very top, it says tier 1 horde, and then it says 2 HP. So what that's telling you is that's 2 zombies per HP that the stat block has. So you go down there onto the stat block, and it'll say their HP is 6. So that means you're dealing with a zombie horde of 12.
Yeah.
So that is kind of something that we didn't go over, but is very important to hordes in general.
But based on that, every time you knock off an HP, you're killing 2 zombies.
Yes, you're killing multiples.
Yeah.
Leaders are the ones that we talked about before, which are the ones that have the mechanics based on essentially spotlighting other adversaries that you have on the field. Sometimes, even bringing in help and everything like that. The next one we have is minions. Minions are, again, the ones with the passive that allows you to basically defeat whenever you deal any damage to them, because they all have practically no health, so to speak. When you hit them, you kill them. But they also have group attacks, so that allows your minions to like jump in together and make group attacks that are stronger based on the number of minions,
which can be a ton of damage
that are on the field.
Yeah. You got a bunch. I mean, think about it. Like if you're walking through like a group of rats, right? Couple rats, no big deal, right? But if you've got like 6 or more rats all up on you, just getting you from every direction, it adds up.
Yeah, starts to add up.
Yep. And in Daggerheart, when you make that singular attack, all that damage is just one attack. You're not like, oh, well, that's only, 1 damage per rat. It's one big, and that goes against your thresholds.
One big chunk.
Yep.
Ranged is, again, just that, ranged. So these are your ones that are staying in ranged. So these are your archers, your magic wielders that are staying in the back, your ones backline that are just casters. Popping off backline stuff.
High damage, almost like always.
Yeah,
high damage,
always.
Weaker thresholds when you get up close.
Skulks are the ones that I refer to as kind of like roguish types as far as the archetypes, which is very broad. But yeah, skulks are the ones that are kind of manipulating the field, moving around, jumping in, glass cannons, so to speak.
The ones that are gonna sneak up behind your backline casters and ranged.
We have social, which is my favorite. So these are the ones that are completely not monsters in most senses. I guess they could be considered, but these are things like something as simple as a merchant.
Social monsters.
A merchant could be a social encounter, so merchants have a stat block. The cool thing about socials that you have to remember is a lot of their abilities are not based so much in combat sometimes as so much in manipulation, which is really, really cool. Next thing you have is solos, the big scaries that Tyler was mentioning before with the buildings. So these are your big ones. So these are your big kind of showpiece adversaries that are going to be on the field. They cost a lot of points to put out there. They're also going to dish out a lot in the way of like special moves and mechanics.
Yeah, they might be able to go multiple times. They're going to be loaded up on different features a lot of the times.
Yep. And then you have your standards. So your standards are just your everyday baddies. So these are the things that you're going to use to flesh out the encounter. And after you choose like your solos or your supports or your skulks or whatever, you need a couple of extra things in there that are just going to be your bog standard, stuff to throw into the meat grinder.
Yeah.
So these are the bad guys. And then finally, you have your supports. So these are your support classes that are going to be there to basically lift up all your other adversaries in the encounter that you build. They're going to be things like buffing or shielding or healing or doing anything that a support would do in a PC side, but on the adversary side of things.
Yeah, a lot of the time, this is going to be the adversary that your PC probably should be focusing down.
Yes.
But because of that, you're going to make sure you have bruisers and stuff next to them, right? So it's there's going to be some cool, some back and forth chess play between you and your players with these guys.
Yeah.
We also go into improvising adversaries. This is something they go over this a little bit later with environments too. They give you a very easy to follow stat block assortment sort of thing. It's basically like, hey, cool, we understand sometimes you have to adjust maybe one of the included adversaries, if the fight's too easy, the fight's too hard, or you're just throwing in something out of thin air, out of your pocket.
Yeah, making it up as you go.
You can just look at this tiers 1 through 4, and let's say, Richard, you pick this guy's pocket, and inside is this grasshopper with razor sharp legs, and I look down and I'm like, oh, yep, he's got attack 1 modifier. His damage dice is a 1d6 plus 2. His difficulty is an 11, and he has thresholds of 7 and 12. And I just boom, and we just play the game.
Yeah.
And I attack you, and I add a +1 to my roll, and you hit me, and guess what? You beat an 11, cool, but you did 8 damage. That's a major, and it's something you just got. And you can adjust that too. Even on the damage die, they give you the 2 options: is 1d6 plus 2, or 1d12 plus 4, depending on whether you want to be that lower end or the higher end of damage. Everything else is, you got your 1, 2, 3, 4. It's cool.
Yeah, and then simple guidelines.
Yeah, and they give you some advice on adjusting how you would move adversaries that are between 1 and tiers 1, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, etc. And you can maybe raise their HP. You can increase how much stress they have, because 1, you increase their HP. That's just how much longer they're going to be in the fight. A lot of these adversaries will have stress-based abilities, just like your players will. And if you increase their stress by 1, 2, maybe even 3, if you're feeling dangerous, that could really, change the tide of battle, because it'll increase how often they can do their abilities as well. You can add and change your, own features and stuff.
Yeah.
Which, this is tabletop role playing.
Yeah, this is tabletop role playing. Yeah,
and it's just some guidance on how they recommend doing it. There's not a lot here, but it's if you're scaling anyone or creating your own stuff, just be wary. I always lean on the side of caution with some of this stuff,
Yeah.
And Richard could attest to a lot of our games will typically start off a little bit easier and then ramp up in difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel like that gives the players a chance to not only like get a grasp on the system or the world they're in, but really get a hold of their character. And I'm not one of those GMs or DMs that's going to go out of my way to memorize every single line of your character sheet. I will know your character. I will have an idea of most of your abilities, but I also trust you as a player to know your character better than I ever could. And if I give you a couple games, to get that under your belt, then guess what? We start picking it up. And then we push the boundaries of what you can handle before you start going down. Because I never want a full TPK. I don't want to have to try to pull out of my butt a reason why the story continues, and I really don't want the game to just end.
Yeah.
We're working on a story together. So I'm glad they kind of give you advice on like how to adjust things and warn you like, hey, if you are adjusting up stress in HP, try not to do it a ton. You don't want to overcommit. And then you're like, well, sorry, the guy's, I know he had 4 HP, but he's got 12 now. Yeah. This fight's going to last an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's real easy to overdo things when you're trying to keep a general balance on stuff. So you just got to be careful. And they give you some, tips on how to avoid that.
Yep. Advice on how, managing the hordes and the minions. The idea with hordes is that you're always going to want their standard attacks to do a ton of damage, but then that damage gets cut in half when you knock out half their numbers, aka half their hit points. And minions, you're going to give them a flat damage value for, the standard attacks for each of like the minions that are up.
Mm-hmm.
And, that decreases as they go down. And they're like, stick to these rules. These are rules that your players are going to kind of get used to and they're going to expect. And it allows you as the GM, it's even though you're making up something on the fly or maybe even ahead of time, if you follow their set rules for the minions and hordes, then creating minions and hordes are going to be much easier.
Yeah.
Defeated adversaries. When adversaries mark their last hit point, they are defeated. Sometimes they'll have like a feature or something that, maybe gives them a chance to not be totally defeated. But this could be, I guess one of the big things to get at here is that, does that mean the fight is over? Does it mean there's a second phase? If you kill the main guy, right? Let's say you kill the main bad guy and there's still a couple enemies up. Do they keep on going? Does the fight start to feel like a slog if at a certain point you're just whittling down, this big oaf in the back and you're like, okay, maybe wrap it up, GM. We already killed the main guy. Maybe you do that. Maybe you do. Like, if the main guy goes down, the one guy comes in for one last swing, gives everything he has, or maybe he gets scared and he runs off. You don't have to just go until every last adversary has hit the ground. And they're not making, death moves like your players either. So you don't want your big bag to come down and then, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to risk it all and they come back at full health or something. No, you're just, they're down and then you're going to narrate, how that's going to go.
Yep.
And you can, if you're not sure, right? If it doesn't feel right, you can totally talk to your players about that. But all right, guys, you've killed the main guy. Things are starting to settle down. Do you guys want to kind of fast forward to the end of this, or do you want to play out the rest of the fight?
Well, and some parties don't want to kill anybody. So it also is a discussion of whether or not you're actually killing somebody, or if you're just knocking him out, taking him hostage, holding him prisoner, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's we mentioned the social adversaries.
Yeah.
That might very well come up.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
The next thing we get into is stat blocks. Woo. So this is where you actually get into the tiers. So they started off by sorting all of your adversaries into the tiers. So tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. Tier 1 obviously being the biggest. And then you actually get into all of the stat blocks for all the different creatures that you have in here. And perhaps my first negative on the entire book.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's because, remember where I talked about one of the things that you'll see on the stat block is the description of the monster. And that's going to be very important later. I meant that because some of these don't have anything other than that description. So
I wasn't sure you were going to bring this up.
There's not a picture for every single thing.
Okay. Hi. So second pro to D&D, this conversation, which at this point in my life feels like less and less, right? Exactly. The latest, the 2024, D&D Monster Manual, for example, people don't like
the 2024 edition, it seems like the means of the consensus. Some people love it. We know people who love it. Richard likes it.
I like it.
Some people hate him. There's art for every monster.
Yes.
In
that
that
spoiled
book.
me.
It's
Spoiled.
awesome.
Spoiled. An art for every monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Candy
art.
for every kid.
There's pages
I like it.
without art.
There are some great artwork here, but there are whole pages with zero art.
Oh.
So you are dependent upon that description sometimes. I mean, they're all, everybody knows what a giant rat looks like. I don't want to see a giant rat. I mean, so not everything has, a piece of art associated with it. So you kind of do have to use your imagination on some of these. Obviously, the ones that are super obscure, they do give you art for those. So, I mean, like, what, like I said, a giant rat looks like, what a giant scorpion looks like.
All right, let's break this down. This is one of our tangents, I assume. We're like 40 something minutes in. We're okay. It's going to be 2 hours now when I say that.
We got a long way to go, sir.
Yeah, we're going to skip a lot too. The art here, I feel like it only really stings. Let's leave D&D out of it, because when you went through like the ancestries and stuff for the players, there is so much art, right?
Yes.
If you want to play a furbolg, they show you so many variations. If you want to play a giant, they show you so many variations. You got the full color finalized version, and then a sketch of like all these different versions of that you could be, or a fairy, and it's really cool. And I understand that when I look at the stat block for a acid burrower, right? That's a bad example because they do show art for the acid burrower. Let's say I'm looking about the cave ogre, right? Where they don't show me art. Do I know what a cave ogre looks like? Maybe, at the end of the day, I'm going to describe it however I want my cave ogre to look. But all of these stat blocks can be skinned or themed to be anything.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's just a collection of abilities that you could say is anything.
Yeah, you could say it's anything.
The cave ogre is like a sentient like rock creature that is living deep within this mine. And you just use the cave ogre stat block. Well, I selfishly want to see the final cave ogre stat block or like art, and then the sketches of all the other versions.
That would take a lot of artwork.
It would take so much, and that's such a big ask, and it would probably take another book.
Yeah, so that's the problem, is it would take a lot more pages. And like I said, most of these have a really good, they've done a good job of something that you don't know what it looks like, showing you what that thing is.
Kinda.
And then some of them they don't. So like a flicker fly, you don't know what a flicker fly is. If they just said flicker fly, you would have to make that up off the top of your head based on the description, but they actually give you a picture of a flicker fly, so it really helps you. But then you have something like a failed experiment. All right, this is a tier 2.
Mm-hmm.
There is no art for this. The description is a magical necromantic experiment gone wrong, leaving them warped and ungainly.
Mm-hmm.
That could literally be anything, which I guess is the point.
I was going to say, I think that's the point.
It is the point. However, a little bit of something to go on would be helpful.
For those who just don't
that just don't have a point of reference for that. So that's my only gripe.
Dipping him back to Cave Ogre for that exact point. Its description is a massive humanoid who sees all sapient life as food. That doesn't actually tell me anything about its look.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, that's the point.
That's the point. Yeah.
But if I didn't have any idea what a cave ogre looked like, and I'm sure you're picturing one, Richard, and I'm sure you're picturing one, the listener.
Yeah.
You have your cave ogre.
We all have our cave ogre.
We all have our cave ogres.
Yeah.
I'm messing up my words again. Yeah, I want something.
Yeah.
But I know it's selfish, and they fit in many stat blocks.
They fit in a lot of stat blocks.
I don't think it would have been feasible.
Yeah, it
would have been to have art for everything.
And they did try. So we did get, artwork for things that we don't know what they are, that helps, like a skeleton dredge or the battle box.
The art is gorgeous.
Yeah, no, the art is great. Flickerfly, the aforementioned Flickerfly looks great.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is there. But yeah. So like I said, we're not going to go over every single one of these. Right. But we do have some honorable mentions from each tier.
Yeah.
So these are the ones that stood out to us. So we'll give you those. Mm-hmm. And then if you want the rest, you'll just have to wait until a later video when we go over every single stat block.
Are we going over every stat block?
Eventually.
Do you guys want us to go over every single stat block? It feels like a lot.
I don't know.
But hey, if you want it, we will.
Give me your tier 1. What's your favorite from tier 1?
My honorable mention that I'm going to spotlight from tier 1 are the giant mosquitoes. And I try to go over I pick a different type.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He put on extra rules for himself.
Yeah, I had to add complications.
Not me. I just picked the one from each tier that I thought was cool.
Oh, so these giant mosquitoes as a Floridian really struck home for me.
True.
So they are a horde type. There's 5 of them per HP. They're about so the description here: dozens of fist-sized mosquitoes flying together for protection.
Really is Florida,
right? See, it just struck home so hard. Motives and tactics: fly away, harass, and steal blood. We didn't super go over this in depth yet. So this is one of those things where, as your GM, you can look down at the stat block and you can figure out how to play that character. Fly away. I hear that and I'm thinking, okay. Maybe between round, like after they get an attack, they're going to try to circle around if they have the chance. If they feel in danger, they're going to fly away. They're going to harass. They're going to come back and forth, which is going to play into that fly away. They're going to poke and leave and poke and leave. And then steal blood. That will get into some of their features. Difficulty 10, thresholds of 5 and 9. Remember, with adversary threshold, if you hit them, that is you've automatically hit the minor. It's if you exceed that major or severe, if you're doing more than 1 hit point. Hit point of 6. This is 5 per hit point, right? So we're looking at 30 fist-sized mosquitoes.
That's a lot of mosquitoes.
It's so cool, though. It's got a stress of 3, attack -2. It's Richard would know this word better than I
Proboscis.
do. See, I would have said proboscis.
No, proboscis.
See? Proboscis. For its
They're
melee,
poker.
it's got the pokey nose. If you play Mr. Mosquito, you know exactly what I'm talking about. 1d8 plus 3 physical damage. That adds up. Experience, camouflage plus 2. Like we mentioned, they're very vague. You can put that into a lot of scenarios. Features, horde, like all these hordes are going to have. But this one specific is horde, 1d4 plus 1. Passive. When the mosquitoes have marked half or more of their HP, their standard attack deals 1d4 plus 1 physical instead. So you're dropping from that d8
down to a d4.
A d4. Yep. Which is also interesting because it goes from the 1d8 plus 3 to the 1d8 plus 1d4 plus 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So the rounding down there. Flying is its passive. While flying, the mosquito has a plus 2 bonus to their difficulty. So it bumps it up to a 12. And what I assume is a creature that should usually be flying. You catch it on the ground, though.
Yeah.
Slightly easier. Bloodsucker for the reaction. When the mosquito attack causes a target to mark HP, you can mark a stress, which you have 3 of, to force the target to mark an additional HP.
Ouch.
Yeah. And you're not armoring away from that additional HP.
Yep. You're just taking it.
Yep. I love it.
Really is Florida.
Nasty, nasty creature.
Mine is actually right next to it. It's the courtier.
I thought you were going to say the giant rat.
A social. So I like
I do love
a
the
social.
socials.
Yeah. So their description is an ambitious or ostentatious dressed socialite. Their motives and tactics are to discredit, gain favor, maneuver, or scheme. They have a difficulty of 12, threshold of 4 and 8, HP of 3, stress of 4, attack of -4.
Heck yeah.
Daggers are their melee, and they do 1d4 plus 2 physical damage. Their experience is a socialite plus 3, so they're good at talking. This is a social monster.
You
after all.
You can use that experience in so many scenarios.
So many different scenarios. They have 2 features, and I absolutely love both of them. The first one is mockery. Mark a stress to say something mocking and force a target within close range to make a presence reaction roll of 14 to see if they can save face. On a failure, the target must mark 2 stress and is vulnerable until the scene ends. Until the scene ends.
Super rough.
Super great. I love it. You're at a party. They make fun of you and you feel shame for the rest of the party.
Vulnerable, so now you're rolled disadvantage.
Rolling disadvantage.
Or people are rolling advantage against you, sorry.
So they mock you in the middle of the party and you are not good. And then the next thing that they do to you is scapegoat. Spend a fear to target a PC. The courtier convinces a crowd or a prominent individual that the target is the cause of their current conflict or misfortune. So again, pointing you out in a crowd and making everyone else do the dirty work.
Yeah.
I love it.
And just in case that didn't come through, both of us are talking. Vulnerable. they have advantage against you. Sorry, I misspoke originally. So yeah,
so
nasty.
I love it. It's such a fun little social
super fun.
encounter. And I just the ideas, so many cool things you can do with that. So that's my tier 1.
All right, moving into tier 2. My pick here, and it's something we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, is the juvenile flicker fly. This is a creature that is adorable. It reminds me of like a cross between, because they did provide art, between like a dragon and a firefly. Of course, feel free to theme that however you want, but I think it's adorable. This is a solo creature. They describe it as a horse-sized insect with iridescent scales,
it's
crystalline
much bigger
wings,
than I thought.
and moving faster than the eye can see. Motives and tactics involve collecting shiny things, hunting, and swooping. Difficulty of 14, thresholds 13 and 26. This is moving in from 1 to 2 on the tier list. Has gone up significantly. Also moving from a horde to a solo. And this is what we mentioned. The solos can be a little tougher. HP of 10, Richard. 10. Now think about that. When
Big
you've got,
dragonfly.
When you've got, multiple solos and potentially other things on the battlefield.
It's fine.
10,
It's
my
fine.
dude.
It's fine.
Stress of 5, an attack +3, wing slash is his weapon of very close range, and 2d10 +4 physical. Now, because it's a solo, we've got multiple features here. One is Relentless 3, passive. The flicker fly can be spotlighted up to 3 times per GM turn. Spend fear as usual to spotlight them. So your PCs miss, you get your 1, and then you can spotlight them an additional 2 times on 1 turn, which is super cool. You have also a Peerless Accuracy, passive. Before the flicker fly makes an attack, roll a d6. On a result of 4 or higher, so 50% chance, the target's evasion is halved against this attack. Whoo! Mind Dance, as an action, you can mark a stress to create a magically dazzling display that grapples the minds of nearby foes. All targets within close range must make an instinct reaction roll. For each target who failed, you gain a fear, and the flicker fly learns one of the target's fears. So 2 things here. 1, each target within that range. So you can load up on fear here, right? You're going to do a stress, but you're going to get a bunch of fear potentially. The learning one of your target's fears is so fun for roleplay.
Yeah.
Like, I love this game. And then hallucinatory breath for a reaction. When the flicker fly takes damage for the first time, it's the first time anyone hits this thing, you're going to activate a countdown. It's a loop 1d6. So you take out your d6, you're going to throw it on your 6 or whatever, wherever you want your countdown to start, honestly. And when it triggers, the flicker fly breathes a hallucinatory gas on all targets in front of them up to far range. Targets must succeed on an instinct reaction roll or be tormented by fearful hallucinations. Targets whose fears are known to the flicker fly have disadvantage on this roll. So if you already hit them with that mind dance and they failed and you know their fear, well, guess what? Now they have disadvantage. Any target who fails must mark a stress and lose a hope. So you hit this guy, pulls out a D6. GM's pulling out a D6. Boom. You hit him again. Boom. Now it's a 5, 4. And you keep taking this damage. This keeps getting triggered. Or if you decide, you know what? Maybe I want the trigger to be every time a PC rolls with fear. Maybe I want it to be, whatever you want as the GM. You could choose what your trigger is going to be. But it's starting the countdown as you get hit with that damage. So I love that this one has one ability that just ties into making the other one better.
Yeah.
And man, the battle point system starts to get interesting to me.
Yeah.
When I'm like, this one enemy seems like a pretty tough fight. And you're telling me he's 5 of my 14 points?
Against the full party, though. Against the full party.
Right. Yeah. And if they roll really well, they'll nuke this creature.
Yeah.
And if they roll really poorly, this creature's going to be around for a little bit. So I'm interested in seeing, what your guys' experiences have been. What about you? Tier 2.
My tier 2 is a leader, and I chose the Secret Keeper. A clandestine leader with a direct channel to a fallen god.
Ooh.
So their moves and tactics are to amass great power, to plot, and take command. Difficulty of 16, so quite high. Thresholds of 13 and 26. They are HP 7. Stress of 4, attack of +3. They have a sigil-laden staff that's a far reach, and they are 2d12 magic damage. They have 2 experiences, which is coercion of a +2 and fallen lore of a +2. This is where they get really interesting. They have some really cool features. The first one is Seize Your Moment. So action spend 2 fear to spotlight 1d4 allies. Attacks they make while spotlighted in this way deal half damage. So it's really cool. You get to activate a group of followers. 'Cause I imagine this guy is a cult leader.
Oh yeah. Any ability spotlighting multiple adversaries is wild.
Mm-hmm. The next one is Our Master's Will, which is a reaction. When you spotlight an ally within far range, mark a stress to gain a fear. So you get fear generation on your own there. The next thing that they have is Summoning Ritual. They have a countdown of 6. When the Seeker Keeper is in the spotlight for the first time, you activate the countdown. Whenever they mark an HP, tick the countdown down by the number of HP that you mark. When it triggers, you summon a minor demon that appears at close range.
Awesome.
So right off the jump, you're getting another ally into the battle. And their last one is Fallen Hound's reaction. Once per scene, when the Seeker Keeper marks 2 HP, 2 or more HP, you can mark a stress to summon a demonic hound pack, which appears at close range and is immediately spotlighted. So I really like the Seeker Keeper. It's cool because it works as it's a leader, and it allows you to spotlight multiple allies, and then generates fear while you're spotlighting, and then generates allies by just summoning in demons and, demonic dogs.
I found it interesting that your countdown very specifically
very specifically, yes. Yeah.
What moves it down.
Yeah.
And then the Juvenile Flickerfly is like, this is what starts the countdown. And this is what happens when you trigger.
Yeah, no, mine is very specific. But yeah, I like him. I think he's cool.
Yeah. All right, moving all the way to tier 3. I've gone for a Skulk this time. I think Skulks and Bruises are actually my 2 favorite types of adversaries. And it's funny because they're both entirely, juxtaposition, like totally as far apart from each other as it could be. But in this instance, it doesn't feel that way because I've chosen the huge green ooze. I wanted to I was looking through this book and I'm like, I really need my gelatinous cube sort of thing. Here we are in its own unique way. The tier 3 Skulk, the huge green ooze, is a translucent green mound of acidic acid. What am I saying? Acid, taller than most humans. Motives and tactics, it is camouflage, creeping up, enveloping, and multiplying. A difficulty of 15, thresholds of 15 and 30, HP of 7, stress of 4. It's got a bonus 3 to its attack. Its ooze appendage is what it uses for melee, and it's a 3d8 plus 1 magic damage. Its experience is blending in for a +3. Its features is slow, so whenever you spotlight your ooze, if you don't have a token on their stat block, they can't act yet, but you place that token on there, and the next time you spotlight them, they can now act. For one of its passives is Acidic Form. I say one of, it's only second passive. I don't know why I do a podcast, because anytime we have to read on a podcast, I can't do it.
No.
Yes, they know.
It's
I
fine.
can't read. I can only just ramble. This is the ramble show.
Read.
I can't read. This is why we don't get money for this. Imagine if we did. I couldn't get paid for this.
Sponsors.
I couldn't get exactly. No one would ever sponsor this.
Sir, you mispronounced the name of our company.
Gosh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Dog and Donuts. It has an acidic form. When the ooze makes a successful attack, the target must mark an armor slot without receiving its benefits. Rad. Like we mentioned, this is like the shredding earlier.
Yeah.
But in this instance, if they can't mark an armor slot, they must mark an additional HP.
Ouch.
So this is going to burn through your health at the end of the day. Envelop as its action. Make an attack against the target within melee range. On a success, the ooze envelops them, and the target must mark 2 stress. While enveloped, The target must mark an additional stress every time they make an action roll. When the ooze takes severe damage, all enveloped creatures are freed and the condition is cleared. This is one of those scenarios where, let's say you get enveloped and you're going to want to make an action roll, try to get out. Just doing that is also going to make you mark additional stress. So you're really going to want your allies to come up and try to bust you out of this thing. But they have to do severe to get you out, which means they have to hit 30 on your threshold. It's so wild. Last feature we got here is Split.
My favorite.
It has a reaction. When the ooze has 4 or more HP marked out of your total of 7, you can spend a fear to split them into 2 green oozes with no HP or stress. So basically, you split into 2 green oozes. You're going to shift stat blocks to the green ooze stat block. That's going to change your features and everything. And but you come out of that with two fresh characters.
Yep.
And immediately spotlight both of them.
Yeah.
And take 2 more, turns essentially.
Yep.
This is super fun.
Split was almost the reason why I was going to choose that one as my tier 3.
Because you're like, I almost
Split.
got it. And then
yeah, I loved it. That was like my choice. And it was for a while until I got a little bit further into the list and decided to go with something a little bit more simple. I chose Vampire.
I thought you were going to choose Vampire.
Standard.
I didn't because it was too basic.
Standard. It's basic, but it is a vampire.
I thought it was interesting that there was 2 vampires.
Well, you have a leader vampire.
On the same tier.
Yeah, you have a leader vampire on the same tier, which is very cool. But I like just the standard, bog standard vampire.
Yep.
An intelligent undead with blood-stained lips and a predator smile. Their motives and tactics are to bite, charm, deceive, feed, and intimidate. Difficulty of 16, the thresholds of 18 and 35, HP of 5, stress of 4, attack of +3. Their melee is rapier. They have 3d8 physical damage, and their experience is a nocturnal hunter +3. They have 2 features, very straightforward. You can probably guess one of them right now, and that is the Draining Bite action. Make an attack against target within melee range. On a success, deal 5d4 physical damage. A target who marks HP from this attack loses a hope and must mark a stress. The vampire then clears a hit point.
It's funny because it's like, oh, it's not a ton of damage.
No.
It's so painful, though.
But it's very painful. Very painful. And then lastly, they have Mist Form. As a reaction, when the vampire takes physical damage, you can spend a fear to take half damage. So you can just bamf out of the way for a second into mist and don't take so much damage. Yes. Very simple.
So cool.
But I like it.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing is like a simple stat block like that.
Yeah.
You break that out. That's easy to run. It's not a whole lot to remember. I do wonder, let's back to the battle point system, right? Let's say you've got 5 different varieties of creatures, on the board. These aren't always so short and simple to remember. And you're going to be balancing these abilities of everyone. So I'm just saying, I've got my thoughts on, and I feel like I made them pretty clear on the battle point system.
We'll see.
Yeah. Last, but certainly not least, tier 4, I've got my perfected zombie. This is a bruiser, a towering muscular zombie with magically infused strength and skill. Motives and tactics to consume, hound, maim, and terrify. Difficulty of 20, which sounds high, but we're talking tier 4 now.
Yeah.
Thresholds of 40 and 70 sounds high, but we're talking tier 4 now. Right? Could you imagine?
Yeah.
HP of 9, which feels low, and stress of 4. Attack +4, great axe, very close, and 4d12 plus 15 for the physical. Excuse me. Features. It's got 4 of these little bad boys. It has this is my favorite one, actually. It has the terrifying passive. When the zombie makes a successful attack, all PCs within far range lose a hope and you gain a fear.
Ugh.
You make an attack, your players are like,
hopeless.
Oh. Yeah.
Hopeless.
God, it's so good. And then you've got the Fearsome Presence passive. PCs can't spend hope to use features against the zombie. Awesome. Perfect Strike. For an action, you mark a stress to make a standard attack against all targets within very close range. Targets the zombie succeeds against are vulnerable until their next rest.
Ouch.
So you hit them with this off the jump if you can get like a group of them, and now you've got advantage on all of them.
All of them, yeah.
Skilled Opportunist as a reaction. When another adversary deals damage to a target within very close range of the zombie, you can spend a fear to add the zombie's standard attack damage to the damage roll.
Harsh.
So one of your adversaries hits somebody and you just spend a fear, and then you're adding in your 40-12 plus 15 damage on whatever that roll was as well.
Yeah.
For a fear.
Yeah.
Wow. Which you're just generating every time you hit somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So you reaction, hit them with this, you jump in, right? And then, okay. You're adding the standard attack damage to the damage roll. So I guess you're not landing successful attack. So your first passive's not going to bounce in.
Doesn't bounce.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not as crazy.
But still.
But still.
Still adding a lot of damage in there.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah.
What's yours?
Yeah, tier 4 is where things get crazy,
It's
obviously.
crazy all over.
And mine is a little bit crazy because it's a solo, and it is the Kraken.
That's the one I was going to pick.
A legendary beast of the sea, bigger than the largest galleon with a sucker-laden tentacles and a terrifying maw. Motos and tactics are to consume, crush, drown, and grapple. Difficulty of 20, thresholds of 35 and 70, HP of 11, stress of 8, attack of +7, tentacles, close range, 4d12 plus 10 physical damage, and really good at swimming, +3. Which
That's not just me.
kind of goes, without saying, it's Kraken. It's good at swimming.
Yeah.
It has many features. The first being Relentless 3 passive. The Kraken can be spotlighted up to 3 times per GM turn.
Yep.
That is insane. That's a lot. And then you spend fear as usual to spotlight them. The next one is Many Tentacles. The Kraken has 7 or fewer marked hit points. They can make a standard attack against 2 targets within range. So they're just doing 2 targets per attack. They have Grapple and Drown as an action. Make an attack roll against a target within close range. On a success, mark a stress to grab them with a tentacle and drag them beneath the water. The target is restrained and vulnerable until they break free with a successful strength roll, or the Kraken takes major or greater damage. While restrained and vulnerable in this way, a target must mark a stress whenever they make an action roll. So just holding them underwater and making them stressed.
Yeah.
Then they have Boiling Blast, action to spend a fear to spew a line of boiling water at any number of targets in a line up to far range. All targets must succeed on an agility reaction roll or take 4d6 plus 9 physical damage. If a target marks an armor slot to reduce the damage, they must also mark a stress. And then lastly, they have Momentum, the one that we talked about before. Whenever the Kraken makes a successful attack against a PC, you gain a fear.
This is one of those ones, and actually a lot of the solos are like this, that the battle point system feels funky, especially when it's in the name, right? Solo.
Yeah.
And they're built for all of these abilities like Relentless, and the fact that Momentum is giving you fear so that you're able to feed that fear into your Relentless and go over and over again. Your Many Tentacles is letting you target multiple people within range, which, let's say your opponents are on a ship, it's all the ship, right? So in one attack, you're going to hit multiple people, and you're going to have potentially 3 attacks on your turn. Every time it goes to you. How many more adversaries do you want to throw on that ship?
Yeah, it really just comes down to the whole idea of making sure that you are taking an effort to balance your encounter. Because by your ruling with having 2 solos in a combat encounter, could you think of a wacky scenario in which a perfected zombie was on deck of the ship that was being attacked by a Kraken at the same time?
Yes, but could you imagine how terrifying that'd be?
That would be no living absolutely PCs. Terrifying. Yes, but by battle building rules, it's attainable.
And so part of it gets funky here, right? Because this thing only has HP of 11.
Yeah.
Let's say you're hitting that 70 threshold consistently. Yeah.
Then
Couple
maybe
swings,
it's fine.
You got this thing down pretty quick. If you're not, you're hitting it, if you're only hitting your minor, That's 11 hits before you can take it down. The swing there, based on how much damage, your PC is going to output on a roll, wild.
Yeah.
You've got to be ready to how are you going to balance this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you just do the one and maybe you're going to bump up its HP a little bit to compensate? I don't know.
Yeah.
We've played, we've done some Daggerheart and stuff like that. We've never done the tier 4
Well,
yet.
yeah, we've never seen anything of
So
this tier before.
We've
So
really got to toy with this.
This is high level play, and definitely is going to probably require some balancing, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. After we get through all of our adversary, stat blocks, which, like we said, hey, we're not doing that today. If that's something you guys actually ever want to see, which I don't imagine most of you would.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you don't. So just let us know. We get into environments. Environments in Daggerheart are adversaries.
Yes. Yeah. They're adversaries.
They've got their own stat blocks. They've got their own, abilities, and they break down very similarly, if not identically, to how the adversaries do. Your environment breakdown, you're going to have your name, your tier, your type, your description, your impulses, which environmental impulses, or in every way, they push and pull those within them is how they describe it. It could be like the river rushing, carrying you away, or how a casino tries to make people spend all their money and forget where they are, and the next thing you know, it's 3 days later and you wake up on like the roof of a strange building and you've never been here before in your life. You've got your difficulty, which is going to what you're going to want your role to be to do the different things in the environment. We'll get to that, and potential adversaries that you might run into here, and what the features will be. The example they give is the Raging River off the jump. I didn't go through and mark like my favorite environments or anything like that.
Mm-mm.
I should have, because there definitely are some really cool environments, but I'm going to go ahead and go through the Raging River just because it's right here on the front.
Yeah.
And it's a simple one to grasp.
Yeah, it's a simple one to grasp.
It's a tier 1 traversal type. There are different types. We'll get to that too. This is being a traversal type is something your characters may have to traverse. A swift moving river without a bridge crossing deep enough to sweep away most people. Its impulses are bar crossing, carry away the unready, and divide the land. This is the way of thinking of the river. Things it might be used for. A difficulty of 10. Potential adversaries you might run into here are different beasts like bear, the glass snake. You might run into jagged knife bandits, or stuff like that. Features of this river: dangerous crossing as a passive. Crossing the river requires the party to complete a progress countdown of 4. A PC who rolls failure with fear is immediately targeted by the undertow action without having to roll or spend a fear on the feature. The undertow action is a spend a fear to catch a PC in the undertow. They must make an agility reaction roll. On a failure, they take 1d6 plus 1 physical damage and are moved a close distance down the river, becoming vulnerable until they get out of the river. On a success, they must mark a stress. So even if they essentially, you target them with fear, even if they succeed, they're marking a stress. And if they fail, they're taking some damage, they're moving down, now they're vulnerable, etc. If that passive, on that countdown 4, if they fail with fear, they're just automatically targeted by this, and you can use it for free. Patient Hunter is your last feature here. Action spend a fear, and you summon a glass snake. Speaking of adversaries you might run into in the river, within close range of a chosen PC. The snake appears in or near the river and immediately takes the spotlight to use their spinning serpent action. They also ask you a couple things here, maybe like, what treasures does the beast have and they have a burrow? What travelers have already fallen victims to this predator? With the undertow, they mention a couple things like, what trinkets or baubles lie along the bottom of the river? Do predators swim in these rivers? So it's just, hey, when they're crossing this river, maybe there's a difficulty. Maybe there's creatures that pop up. None of this, I guess, you think of like an adversary, like this is your list of abilities and things you have to, have access to and things you're probably going to do. In this instance, I think of this as a way to describe a raging river and some examples of complications that might arise as your characters are crossing. I don't think every single time you're crossing a river do you need to have, a glass snake pop up. I don't
And
think
an undertow.
and an
exists,
undertow
yeah.
every single time. But great starting point.
Yeah, and the way that I view environments and the way we've talked about it in the past when we were first learning about them coming into the game is a way to inject a little bit more excitement into specific scenarios that some GMs might find hard to make interesting, right? Because you can just come across a river and then ask your party what they're going to do if they're going to try and traverse across it, and then you say, okay, well, I'm going to make it this difficult, like X difficulty, and then I'm going to have you guys roll and see what you do, and then if you make it, you make it. If you fail, I'm going to make one of you kind of roll in the river, get wet, maybe damage something that you're carrying or something like that. This is all stuff that normal game masters do, right, in set pieces. This is just a way to add a little bit extra into specific set pieces to make scenes, which is really a part of Daggerheart's like core ethos.
Make the environment feel alive.
Making everything feel alive and creating these scenes in which things can happen. And that's kind of where environments come into play. And then when you get into it, they start telling you about the different environment types that you have. And this really helps it kind of like set up the ideas of when you might want to use these things.
Absolutely. I think this is essential.
Yeah.
With this like buildup of, environmental stat blocks.
Yeah. So they jump in, and then basically there are, as of right now, there are 4 main types of environments. So that's exploration, social, traversal, and events. Pretty straightforward. Exploration is an environment like, say, like a room in a dungeon or a specific area in a dungeon or something like that. Socials could be a party. It could be like in an inn. Traversal could be the river thing, right? It could be, like making your way across the desert or something like that.
Something that's like a dangerous location you're moving
like
through.
a dangerous location. And then events are, like an event space, something that's happening. Like it could be a summoning ritual, right? Like at the end of, like tracking down an ancient cult or something.
An area where something is happening.
Yeah, an area where something is happening. So those are your basics. And then you break down into the features that you use. So these are, the different features that they have, which you went over some of these.
Yeah.
Like the river itself having like an undertow that can pull you under. Those kind of things.
It's going to ask you some questions, maybe some plot hooks to help you build
to help
a
you kind of do that kind of stuff. And then there's the adapting environments, which is very similar to the adapting adversaries.
Yes.
It's the same thing. So if you have an environment that kind of fits the bill, but not really, this allows you to either just reskin it completely, come up with something on the fly with a difficulty rating, and damage dice to apply to with whatever might be going on there. Or they talk about scaling an environment to make it either easier or harder for people. So if you have an environment that, sounds really interesting, but it's a tier 4, right, and it's in this book, you can scale that down to tier 1, and there's some guidelines for how to do that here. And then adding or changing features, because sometimes there might be something that's part of a different environment that you think is fun and exciting that you can apply to this. Like I might have a desert themed area, but the sand is constantly moving and liquid like, and I want it to have an undertow where if you lose your footing, you get sucked in and then you
glass
move down.
Snakes.
And you can do that. So it's all kind of ways to adapt those environments to fit what you're doing and what your narrative is.
Dude, I 100% am gonna have a area of the desert now where the sand is moving like a current, and there are glass snakes created by lightning bolts hitting the desert sand. Oh, can't wait to torture you guys.
One of the frameworks that I immediately started to plan out in my head when I read all this and was talking about like doing things, I had recently just started playing Breath of Fire 3 again. And that game opens with a sand skimmer. So a ship that's flying over the oceans of sand, like dunes that like move like water, and a dragon that is a worm that's basically like flying fish, like jumping up in and out of the dunes.
You got to skin a kraken.
And I was all like, man, this sounds amazing. I would love to have a high seas, air quotes, adventure, but just based on the dunes.
Yeah.
It would be really, really cool.
So fun.
So the next thing you get into is the actual stat blocks. So we have all of the different environments that are sorted by tier, just like Adversaries. We didn't choose our favorites on these ones, but I can go ahead and read you through the list because it won't take that long, so you can kind of get an idea of what you're looking at in here.
For sure.
Because we are going to eventually have to go over these because I think these are just too fun not to.
So you do want to go over like the environments at some point?
I was just gonna. What I wanted to do real fast is just go tier and then can tell you what the environment is and what type of environment it is. So tier 1, we have our Abandoned Grove, which is an exploration environment. We have Ambushed, which is an event. So that would be ambushed by, like bandits or whatever. You have Ambushers, which is an event, which is very interesting because it is a scenario that allows you to have your PC set up an ambush.
Mm-hmm.
There is a Bustling Marketplace, which is a social. There is a Cliffside Ascent, which is a traversal. You have a Local Tavern, which is a social. You have an Outpost Town, which is a social. And the aforementioned Raging River, which is a traversal.
Yep.
You want to hit our level 2?
Yeah, level 2, like much shorter list. We have a Cult Ritual happening, which is an event, of course. We have a Hallowed Temple, which surprised me as a social event. We have a Haunted City for exploration and a Mountain Pass traversal. I imagine that one will get a lot of use.
Yeah. Our tier 3, you have the Burning Heart of the Woods exploration.
Wild.
You have a Castle Siege, an event. I'm assuming we'll see a lot of that one in one of the frameworks coming up.
Ugh.
And then you have a Pitched Battle, which is an event. Also something we'll probably see in some frameworks coming up.
Yeah, but that'll be next episodes. Make sure you tune in next week, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, if you want to listen to those and see why I went, ugh. Tier 4, we have the Chaos Realm for traversal, the Divine Usurpation event. Did I say that right? Imperial Court social, which I believe we've previously read about.
Yes, we read about Imperial Court, yeah.
And then the Necromancers, you gave me all the hard words. Necromancers Ossuary.
Ossuary.
See, you're the well-read folk here. I'm just a simple talking man.
Until the chat tells me I said that wrong.
please stand with me on this. So that's all. That's all of our environmental stat blocks.
Yeah.
Which actually, hey, guess what? That's the end of the chapter.
That's the end of the chapter. Yeah, I would like to go into these in more depth because I think that this is probably one of the more interesting aspects.
We were hype about it.
Of Daggerheart, yeah, and I really do like these. And like I said before, they're kind of not something that you would necessarily use all the time, and it is something that a lot of game masters were already doing to an extent. I think this just makes it a lot more accessible for everybody, and it makes it just easy to drop in and have an exciting time.
You brought up how you'll build encounters based on the monster you want to run, and I think a lot of people do that. And looking through this list of environments, we'll do exactly the same.
Yeah, do exactly the same thing.
It's looking at the Raging River and saying, I want to do a desert skimming pirate adventure.
I want it to be
now.
Sand, not water.
Yeah, and the amount of the depths you can go into, based purely off an environmental stat block of all things, is just another reason of why I think this system is so friggin' cool and why I was so excited to get our hands on this book, because the beta teased us with a few environment stat blocks and we were already like, this is amazing. So yeah, hey, if you want to do an episode down the road where we go over all the environments and what they all could be and what they mean, I'm here for it. That'll just be another longer episode. But hey, if you guys want to catch that down the road, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you are on audio places, Spotify, Apple, any of those, hey, what's up? 5 stars if you don't mind. YouTube, like, subscribe. We see all of you down there. All the comments we're getting, answering our questions, love it. Even better when you're correcting us when we're wrong.
Yeah,
that's great for everyone else listening.
Exactly.
So for everything we got wrong on this episode, we really appreciate you fixing that for us, and letting future people come through and know what's up. And if we don't get to each and every one of you, we do apologize. We try to get to as many as we can, and we thank you so much. If you want to help keep the lanterns lit, those nice things you say, they do that. For now, everyone, I've been Tyler.
And I've been Richard.
And we've been True Strike. See ya!
Bye.
Hey, adventurers. Thanks again for joining us today. Please be sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. If there's any questions you'd like to write at the show, you can hit us up on Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram. New episodes release every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening to True Strike.